It's a good day. It's a good Saturday. What are we going to talk about?
We're going to talk about your control issues.
My control issues. Yep. Control. Control. How to step back. How to step back from your kids' lives when you need to step back. Out of all the things that I hear or read, or actually, if I'm going to be honest, which I'm always honest
I
because that's
would,
what my name means.
I would love for you to be honest today.
Like the things that I struggled with control wise, because let's just get this out in the open. Like we all love control. Don't you love to control things?
I like to be in control.
Does it feel good when you can control things or you have the semblance of control in your life?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it does. It does. However, we have these things called children and they don't like to be controlled. So
True.
that
Especially the adult ones.
the adult ones, that can prove to be problematic. But I do see and hear a lot of people on social media who they're just struggling. They're struggling because their kids have grown up and they don't know what to do. They don't know how to bridge the gap. They don't know how to have relationship. They don't know what to do or what they did that their kids pulled away. And so we're going to talk about some control things today. Like where does control originate from? So I did a little digging. Little digging.
Okay.
A little research. So, because I wanted to know, like, why did I want to control things in my kids' lives? Like, why do you want to control your children's lives?
Perceived safety,
Yeah.
that I know more than they know, and I may want something more than they do, or I may see a talent or a skill set in them that they aren't seeing. So
Yeah.
I want to equip them, but it comes across
Yeah.
as controlling and that they never measure up.
Yeah. Here's a big one for me personally, fear. Like,
Of
just fear of something going wrong with them, fear of them literally getting off the rails or something terrible happening. Like I didn't want them to experiment with drugs and alcohol because bad things happen when, you know, kids get out on their own and drink and drug it up and whatever. So fear, I feel like for me personally, and maybe I'm speaking for a lot of women, but I think a motivator, or maybe a better word would be root behind the need to control, even if you don't really recognize it as control, the root is fear. Fear of um, those kids not being in your life anymore. You know, it's hard to go from doing all that you do for your children to you wake up one day and the house is quiet, their bedroom's empty, and they're ghosting you. Like you can't get a response on a phone, because then you're left with what do I do? What do I do with my days? What do I do with my life? And if you haven't prepared for that, it's a really rude awakening. So, trauma. Sometimes we control things. Maybe we had a traumatic experience in our lives. Have you ever heard the word? This is something I learned last night. Catastrophizing. We all know what a catastrophe is, right? Like a catastrophe is something horrible and life changing that happens. So I can think of, a couple times in my life when something catastrophic happened, like my dad died. Um, there's things like that that can hit a life. But sometimes if we have been through traumatic experiences, we end up doing what's called catastrophizing, which is assuming the worst in any given scenario. Um,
so it's something that didn't really happen, but in your mind, you're imagining it could.
yes.
Okay.
And we want to prepare,
Prevent.
hedge our bets against that, the possibility of that happening.
Okay.
But it's very real in a person's mind.
Mm-hmm.
I think a lot of moms deal with hypervigilance. I was a hypervigilant person, and I still kind of am to a certain extent because the grandbabies have different rules when Allie's in charge than maybe when their parents are in charge because I don't want one of them hurting. Like we don't have feral grandchildren. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I think sometimes, mom and dad let them jump on the couch sometimes, and we don't jump on the couch when Allie's around because I don't want a kid that, you know, gets a busted lip or, you know. So maybe some parents are super hyper vigilant. I don't remember having trauma in my life with like an injury. So, but I recognize I have a hyper vigilant personality, you know. Do you? You probably have a less hyper vigilant
Much
personality.
less. I mean, I'm even thinking back to my own childhood, being differences between boys and girls, which I know we've seen since we didn't have girls, but now we've got a granddaughter. But growing up, I had multiple broken arms, multiple stitches. I mean, climbing trees, the things that we would use our bikes to jump over. I mean, that would probably create trauma for a lot of moms.
You really had multiple broken arms.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I did not know this about you.
Wow. After 38 years. One was playing Mighty Might football.
Hmm.
Another one, this one's crazy. The real old gas stations, they had like a machine that today, if you were to crank it and it's got two wheels and it pulls the chamois through and dries it out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I got a little too close to that and
my
was
God.
using my hand to feel the roller. And then the top roller caught and it dragged my hand through those rollers and it was literally squeegeeing my hands. So I broke that one too. So that was just out of curiosity. I wonder what would happen if I did this. I found out.
Okay. Yeah. This is probably why you married somebody hypervigilant. Your spirit knew you needed somebody to, you know, maybe keep
so.
you from climbing on top of the roof to put on Christmas lights. One of our biggest fights within the last 5 years.
Safe.
One of our biggest fights was, well, maybe not our biggest fight, but you were not happy with me. Like, we have a very pitched roof, like high pitched roof. And you were going to crawl up there and put up Christmas lights. And I was like,
And
oh,
your
no.
control issues came out.
Maybe. But I was like, look, at our age, if you fall and break a hip or worse and leave me, like, no. And I feel
so
like
you're
you
being
think
selfish.
you thought I was
Okay.
emasculating you. Anyway, but I saved
We're off topic.
your life that day. I saved your life because I'm hypervigilant. Anyway, not to make a joke of it, because some people really do deal with this. Like, you know, they just have an increased alertness about things. And this is maybe one reason why we try to control our kids' lives. Another reason, some of us have bad childhood experiences. You know, maybe you have an experience of having a parent with substance abuse. Maybe you had an alcoholic parent. And so you're trying to control your child's life to make sure that they don't fall into that same trap. So maybe your parents were emotionally unavailable. You know, I think most of us probably at one time or other we deal with parents that were emotionally unavailable. Maybe not all the time, but I can look back in our lives and see we probably had seasons where we weren't as emotionally available as we needed to be to our own children because of life, you know? So that's another reason that I think people struggle with trying to control things. Another reason, and I have not dug in too much to this, but I've skimmed the surface. Maybe people have an anxious attachment style. Have you heard of attachment styles and personalities?
Vaguely.
So there's I think there's 4 attachment styles. You know, there's a healthy one, but there's like anxious, there's avoidant, and I can't remember the 4th one right off the top of my head, but basically an anxious attachment style causes someone to be codependent, or maybe they require like validation from another person, or they get their emotional regulation from that person. And so if we have an anxious attachment style with our children, or maybe one child out of our children, maybe there's an only child, I don't know what the case could be, but we need that child for validation, emotional regulation, and we may not even recognize it, you know. But attachment styles are something I think that would be interesting to really look into. So You probably want me to have an ancient attachment style to you, don't you? That's what you're thinking right now. I can read your
An
mind.
attachment style, yes, but I don't want an anxious one
Mm, okay.
because that keeps me off of the roof.
It does. It does.
Can I get some clarity on something?
Yes.
Who's this message to?
Just parents who are struggling to let go.
So
Struggling to
is it
let
teenagers,
go
upper teenagers, adult children?
of adult children, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. So, yeah. I
Okay.
think, and I think that
So
all of this manifests.
What's the problem that being one of these control styles, what problem does that present?
Well, it presents a problem of your children not wanting you to control their lives. Like
Okay.
you inadvertently,
So
parents inadvertently try to control a child's life, and that doesn't work the older they get.
it creates relational issues.
Relational issues.
Okay.
It creates relational chasms, like maybe not even a relational issue. Maybe there's no relationship at all,
Okay.
So I just wanted to kind of deep dive into what are some of the reasons that we like control. One of the last ones that I have on my little list here when I was kind of like trying to research some of this is learned behaviors. Learned behavior, like how did our parents do when we were being raised? How did they do things? Like you've heard the story about the reason a woman like makes her roast a certain way
Yeah.
is because, well, she doesn't really
Yeah.
know why. It's because her mom did it,
Yeah.
and her mom before her did it, and then her mom before her did it, and that's the basic reason. So we learn how to raise kids, how to parent, how to have relationship through how our parents raise us.
Yeah.
Like I'll just say this, and my mom lives with us, and she's super great. I mean, she's my mom, obviously. She just turned 85, and she's delight. She's easy to live with, but she's my mom. One of the things that I remember growing up with my mom always looked at things from like almost a fear-based perspective, like, oh, what if? Which is probably where I get some of my hypervigilance from, And so I have to really be careful. I'm aware of this, and I have to make sure that I don't automatically jump to the what ifs, but I do most of the time, So because of how I was raised, which is not a terrible thing, she wasn't an alcoholic, she wasn't a druggie, she didn't beat me, she didn't prostitute me out. Like these are real things that happen. No, this happens to kids. It's awful, but it happens. But it's still something that if you're not aware of where you came from, you're going to repeat some things. And our boys were not easy to we couldn't put our thumb on them easily, the older they got. So if you're a mom who struggles losing control, letting go of control, because I know you hate the word losing control.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Then this is for you, because I can really resonate with you. So
I would like to not clarify, but add some color on why do I not like the word losing control?
tell us why.
Well,
Because you feel like somebody's going to take something from you?
well, from a mindset perspective, losing control puts you in a victim position. And
Yeah.
if someone's gonna take something from me and I've lost it, then I'm that victim. And we've already discussed many times, you cannot grow from a place of victimhood.
I know.
But if I relinquish control, that does put me at least in somewhat control of me. Because you said before, the only person you can honestly control is you.
Yourself. Yeah.
And you can have tremendous influence elsewhere. But if we look at it from, I am losing control, that's depressing, discouraging, that's a victim, as opposed to, I am choosing to relinquish control because it's healthy for me, it's healthy for my spouse, healthier for my kids. So sometimes it's just a subtle change in frame in words that we use can completely reframe
they
a
can.
topic.
And I will say this about victimization. A lot of times when I was really struggling early on in the empty nest years, I did see myself as a victim. I sat in that place of, woe is me. What am I going to do? Why is this happening to me?
Mm-hmm.
Because that's how it felt. And my feelings superseded my ability to think clearly about the matter. My feelings overshadowed everything. And my feelings said, this was happening to me,
And they're real.
and they're real. It felt as though other mothers were just riding off into the sunset and, living their empty nest lives, and their kids were killing it at college and finding spouses and getting married and having grandbabies. And here I was stuck in that victim place of, what am I going to do? So
To take a real hard stance, it may not be overly popular, but I think when we're looking at it from a position of what am I losing, I am making the entire situation about me. It is a selfish position. Doesn't mean it's not real, doesn't mean it doesn't hurt, but as long as my focus continues to be on how does this make me feel, as opposed to what can I do to serve my kids, that is also a different level of energy.
yeah, it is. And I also want to say this. It's almost like I hear what you're saying and I understand that now. But I think sometimes a person's feelings really do need to be validated. It it yes, I can see where they're feeling like they're making it about themselves, but okay, I can only speak for myself. Looking back on that place that I was in life, so many things were happening. We've talked about this before on previous podcasts. Hormones raging out of control. I was like, everything was changing, including my kids leaving. So I didn't need someone at that point in time to say, you're making this all about you. Was that true? Yes, it's true. But that would not have helped me. I think sometimes validating a person's feelings
I can agree with that.
is important.
I think the right thing would be spousal validation is where it should be coming from, and not looking for validation from your adult children who have
That's
moved
the
out.
key. That's the key. Because, and that's what we talked about, like an anxious attachment style almost pushes a person to get that emotional regulation or validation from the child. And that's problematic. So I just want to make sure that, yes, while there are things that we talk about that might feel harsh, I always want to go back to making sure that we're validating a person's feelings, because I don't know who's listening. I don't know. You may be somebody who just literally it's September, the 1st of September. Your kids just left for college. Your last child left the nest for college and you're hurting. Like, I want to validate your feelings because I remember being there, and I want to remind people it's a process. Right today, we're fine with empty nest things. But 10 years ago, I wasn't fine. I was not well. And so, but it's been a process. We've had to do a lot of work and a lot of digging deep and a lot of reading and listening and all the things. So if you are struggling with not being able to control or be the manager of your kid's life anymore, I think there's one point I'm thinking of that I realized in my own life. I didn't prepare myself well. A lot of people feel like they hit a point and they wake up and it's just like, oh my gosh, everything's changed. If I had little by little let go and realized, and I think cognitively I knew this was going to happen, but life takes over and you don't have time to sit in that place and work on real feelings of, okay, how do I let go of my kids a little bit each day? We don't have a morning exercise where we wake up and the first thing we do is let go a little bit more today because your child is growing up. They're a day older.
But could you have
maybe, I don't know.
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
That is, the morning is the absolute best way to get the day going the right direction. So if there is a mom or dad out there that's having that kind of a routine of a morning, that would absolutely change the way you begin to see the day. So I think what you just shared is brilliant. It's spot on.
Yeah.
And I haven't heard anybody out there really talking about how do I prepare for what's coming.
Yeah.
To your point, cognitively, you knew something was coming up, but because we hadn't been through it yet up to that point, we hadn't read any books or seen any podcasts on, okay, this train's coming, and either I'm going to get out of the way or I'm going to get run over by it. And I think most of us, we just get run over, and then we have to repair, recoup, rejuvenate.
Mm-hmm.
But I think with what you just said, if we were to begin to encourage parents they see the train coming, if they would say statements like that, do you realize what that would do to the psychological site of what's coming?
Mm-hmm.
It would change the view.
It would.
Completely.
Well, and I think that's why I feel like we speak a lot to empty nest issues, because that's where we're at. Like we're going to be 60. Our children are grown. We've got grandkids. I am that old. Yes.
You look good.
Yeah. Thanks. But my hope is to reach even parents who are, maybe you're in the middle school years, high school. It's never too late to start thinking, I have to emotionally prepare myself for this, and just let go a little at a time.
And I think framing it from, we have to prepare for it in an exciting way, not dread it, because there's two ways that you can prepare for something. The worst is coming. How do I survive? Or this train is coming. How do I thrive?
Yeah.
How do I make the most of it? I mean, that's going to probably be a good topic for something in the future, but it's like, it's never too early. I know you said this on other podcasts where you tell other moms, they've got 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds.
Yeah.
Not too early to start thinking about it, but frame it in this is an opportunity we have to prepare them. And what's interesting is when we're intentionally preparing them to launch, it's also intentionally preparing us for them to launch.
Yeah.
So it works on both sides.
Well, and that's why they call it child training. You're training your child, but you're also training yourself in the process, So here's something not to do when your child leaves or you have grown children. You don't climb over their fence and say, hey, if I were you, this is how I would handle this. Instead of doing this, do this.
Agreed.
That's a really difficult thing to stop doing, because you've spent a child's whole life directing, redirecting, advising, and I think one of the hardest shifts to make as a parent of grown children is figuring out when to shift out of that advisor role, out of that director role. Like basically you're not directing the play of their lives anymore. You are watching it. You're in the audience. So a better thing to do would be to just wait until you're asked. And that's really hard. Like, me, I have a lot of words that have to come out every day. So closing your mouth and not saying what you want to say, or I will say this, maybe, say those words to your spouse, give that advice to, maybe you have friends who are walking through the same season at the same time, that's healthier than saying it to your child. So that's a big mistake that I think I see a lot of people make. Can you think of anything?
Well, have you ever made that mistake?
Oh, yeah. Are you kidding?
Like what? Can you think of anything?
Yeah. I mean, I remember a lot of times when, and our situations are all different. And like, I don't want to repeat myself, because I don't know what people have watched, but like with
Let's pretend they have never seen this before.
Okay. With our oldest, for sure, he was the first to leave, he moved out on his own. And I think there were probably times where I tried to tell him, don't spend your money on this, like you need to buy stock in Taco Bell, maybe save your money and learn how to, like, whatever it might be. And that's a benign thing, but that's an example of, I couldn't quit mothering when I probably should have quit mothering. I know one of our kids just went through this. He partied like it was 1999, And that was a scary thing for me because I tend to look at things from, like I can be fearful. I can be drug into that fearful place really fast. And, you know, I told him over and over, maybe practice the one and done. Like if you are somewhere and you're socially drinking or whatever it might be, but yeah, offering advice as far as do this and not this because I love my kids, but I also want the peace of mind of knowing that they're not making harebrained decisions,
You know,
you know?
and I've got it's a one-liner. Sometimes you like it, but it seems like most of the time you push back on it.
On one-liners?
On this particular
Oh,
one, where I feel like I've learned from experience and heard from other dads, unsolicited advice comes across as criticism. So I can think of a time when Taylor was still living at home, still high school. I could easily go in, wake him up like on a Saturday morning, and I would take his butt to Starbucks, and we would talk business things and what do you want to do with your future. And that was when he was really into music and wanted to be a worship leader. And but when he was moved out, I couldn't. I could try to make him, but that was some of the control. When he was living at home, it was a lot easier.
yeah.
I could wake him up, drag him if I
Yeah.
had to. But when he was out of the house,
Did he sleep through coffee meetings?
oh yeah, multiple
Yeah.
ones, and it made me mad. And then I would either guilt trip him or lecture him. But it was like those were the beginning stages of realizing we've raised them to leave, and we're not letting them leave. They're
Yeah.
physically out of the house, but we're still trying to
Yeah.
control what they do, when they do it, what are they going to learn, how quickly are they going to learn. So I think there was just a lot of minor things, but that's also unfair to say. It might have been minor in my eyes, but in their eyes, dad needs to back off.
Yeah.
And the harder we try to help without their requesting it,
Yeah.
it definitely comes across
Yeah. It
as
does.
we're being critical.
It
And
does.
from that perspective, they're probably also measuring or looking at, I don't measure up,
Mm-hmm.
or they're disappointed in me, or they're not going to be proud of me, which it wasn't that they're the case, but perception so much drives
Yeah.
reality, their own personal reality.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing not to do with your grown children is constantly putting demands on their time.
Or like meet me at Starbucks on Saturday morning at 8 a.m.
Well, I don't
when
know
they
that
were out until
that's not a
however late.
yeah, that's not a constant. I mean, when I'm talking constant demands on time, um, when a kid leaves and there's still multiple things during the week that they're expected to be at
Mm,
or to do or with the I think realizing that even family life and maybe even traditions like have to shift and change a little bit is a healthy thing and not because we want to as a mom we want to hang on to those things because they're familiar and it ensures we get to see our child. And I think there's parents who place an unhealthy amount, like constant contact. Just to have now with cell phones, constant contact. I need to know that you're okay. And I went through this because especially with Logan, because I didn't know he didn't live at home. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know when he got in. I didn't know
and
if
that
he
was
even made it
almost
home.
easier,
Oh,
honestly. Not knowing what time he got in was better than when he lived at home and was out until hours of the night because you wouldn't go to sleep.
no.
But I'm
Yeah.
going back to the other where you had an expectation of time, and I can remember a very specific example, and I'm hoping you'll bring it up of Taylor and
Sunday
Lindsay.
lunch. Yeah.
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 What was your expectation?
Well, my expectation was that we would still have Sunday lunch together after church. And I love that. I love to cook. I love feeding. I'm used to feeding not just our kids, but like, you know, we collect kids.
Yeah.
Um, and they had just gotten married and they were working and serving at church and Sunday afternoons to them were they wanted to go home and just relax and chill and do what they wanted to do and they were gracious and kind. Lindsay was very kind. Taylor was not always very
was a
kind.
little more direct.
He was a little more direct, but I didn't see the writing on the wall. And I think a lot of parents don't see that. Your child is trying to draw boundaries and we don't recognize it.
Do you mind going ahead and, for sake of the story, can you play out exactly what took place on that?
Well, I believe if I'm remembering correctly, they just didn't come one Sunday. I think I got a text that they were going home after church, and I had cooked, and which we still had Logan and Peyton and I don't know, maybe a friend or two. Who knows, but it kind of hurt me. But I was not happy that it was Sunday after church and they just decided not to come. And Taylor was like, if you're not willing to take what we can give you, we just won't show up at all, ever. That was the long and short of it.
Yeah.
And it just caused me to really stop and think, like, wait, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Who am I doing this for? Like, it might be serving me until it's not, but it's not really serving them.
Yeah.
I wasn't thinking from the perspective of how, like us, when we were first married, if my parents had demanded or had this strong expectation,
or implied,
yeah, it that would have been that would not would I don't think I would have liked it.
yeah.
And
with this specific scenario, one, if the children still live in the area, that can create some expectations on time, right? When they're spread out. And I think there's a lot of reasons why kids want to leave the town that they're in, because it does give them more opportunity to create more independence. But for this one specifically, your motive was good. The motive was, I'm going to provide a lunch. It was an act of love. You'd love to see them, but there was I don't know that we ever said specifically, okay, you have to be here every weekend, but it was definitely implied. And the message that they were receiving is, because he worked at church, that was a work day. He got up and was there early, had to stay a little bit later, it was 2/3 of the day for him.
They wanted to go home and chill.
If he wouldn't have had the guts to have this conversation and say, we can't be there every Sunday, we just physically can't do it, and if you're not okay with what you can get from us, we just won't come at all.
Yeah.
Would I reframe it if I were? Yes, but that was the young version of him. But for other parents, they have to understand that these are young adults, especially this one was married, and we did have some expectations placed on their time that was unfair to them.
Yeah.
But the motive, again, it wasn't
Sure.
manipulative.
Well, if I'm correct in saying this, I think most parents that are struggling right now with the empty nest, their motives are not bad. They're just struggling with things changing. Like, most of us do not like change, but the only constant in life is change. That's the only thing that's going to happen over and over again. We will experience change. And if we don't walk through the changes of life gracefully and extend grace to our family members, especially our children, like, if I'm going to extend grace to anyone in my life, it's going to be those right in my immediate family, But sometimes we can't see past what we're dealing with. And so, yes, instead of making constant demands on your child's time, draw boundaries, let them honor their boundaries, read between the lines. Because sometimes you might have kids who, like our kids, or specifically Taylor, will tell you, this is the boundary. I didn't have to guess. He left no room for assumption. But not all kids are going to be that direct, and you have to be able to read between the lines and know, okay, they're drawing a boundary in their life, and I am going to respect that boundary. If we view our grown kids as adults, mano a mano, adult to adult, instead of someone that we are responsible for or we have authority over. I think that's another shift that parents miss. And that's kind of hard to do because
Yeah.
we put them in diapers for years, and now we're having to look at them like you're an adult, an equal,
Yeah.
if you
So
will.
I'm going to kind of split this next little conversation into two parts. We've really been talking about the parents of adult children that have moved out.
Yes.
Where this really can be magnified and prepared for is when they are their upper teens, their junior, senior in high school. To the extent that parents can begin to see the trend coming, as we were talking about, and begin to recognize our job is to not control our kids for the rest of their life. It is really to release them to go do what they've been called to do. So what we're talking about would have been made so much easier if we would have been able to cognitively think through, what do we want our relationship with our adult children to be when they move out?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, they're only 16. Is it too early to think of that?
No,
No.
it's never too early.
And that's the whole point. And so for any parents that are watching on this and you've got 16, 17, 18-year-old kids, the time to start preparing for when they're 23, 24, 25, it's right now.
I'll go a step further with that.
All right, you do.
And I will say, having conversations with your child, your teenage child, and active conversations about what do you envision our lives and our relationship to look like after you leave for college? Like looking back, I would want to get into my child's heart and into their head and know what does your healthy relationship with me look like to you behind
really
your
good.
eyes, you know?
Because when we let them help orchestrate what it looks like, there's going to be a lot more buy-in.
Yeah.
So from their perspective, they have a locus of control, so to speak. They get input
Yeah.
in that. And then as a parent, you get to from an early onset begin to realize, what can this relationship look like?
Mhm.
If I push the envelope too far, too hard, it's going to backfire.
Yeah.
We've seen that over and over and over, not just in ours, but in all the families that we've worked with.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
a great opportunity for that.
Last point. Here's what you should not do. Can you think of things that people use to manipulate a grown child?
Money,
And maybe that's a big one. That's a big one.
money, favor, guilt.
Guilt. That was where I was going.
Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of parents, and maybe it is cognitive. Maybe they realize exactly what they're doing. Use money to manipulate.
Yeah, I think some do use money intentionally. I think we could go to extremes, right? We're not talking about abuse or narcissism, or we're just talking about, as a general rule, a lot of the higher net worth families that I've worked with, they do use money
Yeah.
or status or a position in the company, and they do use that as a position of control. If you don't do what I tell you to do, you're not going to have this title at the company, or you're not going to have this role, or I've even seen some where they're written out of a will if they don't do exactly what they're told to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we even talked about this the other day because we kind of have talked through some of these things. There's a healthy tension in the middle, like with money, because sometimes children, you don't have, when they live in your home, like, and they're in school, you are their provision. Like, everything that they have comes from the parent, pretty much. So one end of the spectrum is using money to manipulate, but then you also can use money to bless. Like, what if, like we talked about the difference, like, because money is not evil. Money is just it's
a tool.
And so everybody needs it. We all have to have it to survive. There's a big difference when you use money as a tool to get your way or to control. And even guilt. Guilt is a form of currency, my kids will run 1,000 miles the other direction if you try to guilt them into, which, that's a good thing now. Like, I remember saying on a previous episode, like, sometimes I wished I had TV kids who would just do whatever. But now that they're adults, I'm glad that they're critical thinkers. They think through things. They're not easily manipulated or guilted into things. And it makes it that much sweeter when they do something, because I know that it's a pure thing that they're doing. It's not coming from having been coerced. And but I think money, guilt, all those things are things that parents grasp toward when you're desperate for a relationship, or you're desperate to um, control because you're fearful, or whatever the case may be. So instead of using money to manipulate, maybe use money to bless. Like,
Yes, to
yeah,
a reward. I mean, I think it's wonderful when, if you are a business owner and you can train up your child to prepare them to enter into the family business
mm-hmm.
and pay them appropriately, pay them
Yeah,
accordingly. I think that's a wonderful use of it, but it could definitely be turned into manipulation, um, definitely used for guilt.
yeah,
And I think we've seen it from the other direction as well. Uh, there are scenarios where children will manipulate their parents.
yeah,
You know, one thing we've heard from even some of the other comments several months back on after one of the episodes is this grandparent was saying that their kids, they won't let them see the grandkids because they don't approve of X, Y, Z, whatever it was. I can't remember the exact example, but I mean, it can go both ways.
yeah. It can, it can. And here's what I would say to an adult child. um, because when you don't know the situation, I don't know the situation,
Yeah.
like what you refer to, but like as an adult child with, you've got a spouse and you've got your own children, you get to make that choice. You get to choose who your children are around. You get to choose who you keep them from. And I think when it comes to family members, I think it would have to be pretty bad for me to keep grandparents away from my children. Do you know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you'd have to be a predator or something awful before I would keep you from my grandchildren, or my own children. So I think that I'm glad you brought that up, because we mainly speak to parents, because a lot of parents are going to be the ones that spend time watching this. But if
You know what though? I was really surprised. A lot of the comments, especially on TikTok, were adult children that were saying, "I wish my parents would just talk to me. I
Yeah,
wish they wouldn't." So I think there are a lot of adult
yeah,
children that want to know, how can I connect with my parents or reconnect with my parents?
yeah,
And that men's group that I got to speak to the other day, I told you, I was really surprised how many men came up afterwards and talked about literally being estranged from their adult children. And one of them had asked a question, what do I do? I've given him advice because I see so much potential in him and I know he can do better. Well, if that's the message, he
I
may
know.
be, his heart's right. He sees potential and he wants them to grow. Well, the children or the adult son is hearing it as a critique, and I'm not enough. I'm not doing enough. And so the dad was like, every time I do this, he pushes me away. What do I do? And my challenge to him was just sit with him and ask how he is. He said, I'm not supposed to ask or make a suggestion. No, just sit and listen.
Mhm.
And he had this look on his face like that was a foreign idea.
Yeah,
But if you want to build that relationship, you can't go around wanting to quote better your son or your daughter.
yeah.
Your heart's in the great place. I get that.
Because that kid's probably heard that on repeat.
Most
It's like
likely
a broken record. So if you are
this
an
adult
adult
child.
child,
Okay.
here are examples of allowing your parents to give up control, or just to be. I think one of the pieces of advice I would give them is to give them time to grieve.
Give the
Give them time
parents
to,
time to
give
grieve.
your parents time to grieve. You're leaving the home, and grace and flexibility. We talked about this on another episode just recently.
Mm-hmm.
Give grace, be flexible, because while you as a child are going through things for the first time, most likely your parents are going through what they're going through for the first time. So, grace given is grace received. And I think allowing your parents to grieve and to just, to be kind as you can, and again, we're talking vanilla, middle of the road, basic issues. We're not talking off roading into
Extremes.
extremes. Yeah.
Well, I know we remember a while back we had Peyton on the
Yeah.
podcast,
Yeah.
and I remember his story, and it was the first time I'd heard the story right there on the podcast, where when we were talking about the control and different things,
Yeah.
and he was like, "I'm going to travel. I'm not going to tell mom and dad. They're just going to have to find out on Instagram or
Well,
social."
because we probably were trying to keep touch with him too much to try to keep our thumb on, where are you? Are you okay? What are you doing?
So the full story is I would text him when I found out he's in this case, it was New York. Hey, buddy, if you'd let me know in advance, happy to be praying for you, pray for your travel, your success, whatever it was. So my motive wasn't necessarily to control his communication. It really was, I wanted to be able to pray for him. I mean, we pray for him every way, but when they're traveling,
Yeah.
I want to be able to pray specifically. And we've had the conversation since then. He's like,
Yeah.
I misconstrued that as control. And he said, I didn't handle it well. But this is now years after the fact. So even me saying, hey, if you would just let me know you're traveling, I can pray for you, was an honest, pure motive, because he was a young man launching his wings. He heard that as
Constrictive.
and you have to let me know before you travel.
Yes.
And so I'll think, to your point, give some grace that, maybe your parents are just checking up on you. Maybe they are just wanting to pray for you. Maybe what you're hearing is not what
Yeah.
they're implying.
Yeah. Give grace. Be gentle. Be gentle. Also, another thing is to be kind in your communication to them, because, again, this is new. If boundaries are necessary for you, be kind in how you communicate that to your parents. And we've said ad nauseum on this podcast, communication is the key. I feel like it's the bedrock. It's that foundation. If you can't communicate well, or you are not communicating, then that's going to cause so many problems. Learn how to talk to your family members. If somebody misunderstands you, don't be afraid to go back and re-clarify. I said this the other day, like, don't make me fill in the blanks. And our family, as good or bad, we didn't let very many things just lie. We talked about them, and we might have over talked, but, draw the boundaries, do the things that you need to do for your personal health, but be kind in doing it. Another thing, the last thing I'll say that I would do if I was an adult child and my parents are kind of struggling through things, is don't ghost them. Don't withhold a text. If a parent is, and I'm not saying to enable like over texting, okay, but don't withhold letting them know that you're okay. If you are away at college for the first time and your parents are trying to get used to this, you're trying to get used to a new life, being independent, be willing to check in once in a while, because as a mom, like, we don't know what's happening. And I know there's always two sides to every story. I was talking to somebody the other day who, it's kind of funny because I didn't have a daughter. We had sons, but she is aware of a mother who basically has this daughter who's gone off to college, and she visits her almost every weekend at college, does her hair, stays in her dorm room. And
wow.
but it's like it's kind of a reciprocating kind of thing. And like, in my mind, I mean, I'm hearing the wee oo, like the red lights are going off. Like, that's problematic, and I'll tell you why. Because once that daughter finds who she wants to marry, you can't, that's not a healthy thing, because I don't know many young men who are going to want to marry a daughter who's,
Yep.
that attached to her mom. So there's got to be some apron strings cut. And as parents, we have to be responsible to, if we got to initiate it, we got to initiate it. So anyway, that's an extreme, but check in with your parents. What about you? Got any other things to add?
Are you landing the plane?
Well, I mean, I feel like I've pretty much exhausted everything that we're
Well, you have a
going to
lot of
talk
words,
about.
you said.
I did have a lot of words, and this was a big one.
My advice in whatever the situation throughout this whole thing, it does boil down to communication. I would encourage if it's a dad with a daughter, dad with a son, I would encourage you to be able to ask the question, what can I do to better support you? What can I do to strengthen our relationship? What do you need from me? And then shut up. Then part two, no matter what the answer is, do not become defensive.
Mm-hmm.
The worst thing you can do, and to shut down any future communications, is when they give you an honest answer, you defend why they're wrong. That will absolutely annihilate the communication piece.
Well, and here's the hard truth to hear, because in our defense, our defending of ourselves, there's always a little bit of truth in what our kid says, you know, like, and I think looking for that, you know, is important, you know, because why are they saying that? Like,
Yeah,
why
and
would
I
they?
guess that's my encouragement is where there's a lot of truth or little.
Yeah.
That to me, and now at our age, we're 10 years past all this. Would I have been this wise 10 years ago to be able to not defend myself? Probably not.
I was.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
Just trying to lighten the mood a little bit. This is a heavy topic.
Well,
It's heavy for people to hear.
but to finish that statement, whether there's a lot of truth or a little truth is completely irrelevant,
Yeah.
because that is where they're coming from. And if your son or daughter is willing to give you an answer that is probably unpopular, you know they're uncomfortable saying it.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to open up those lines of communication, especially for the future, hear them out. We used to call it fall on the sword.
Yeah.
Whether there's a lot of truth or a little truth is irrelevant. Fall on the sword. Apologize for that behavior you did. Not say, well, I'm sorry you felt that way.
Yes.
Or, I'm sorry you took it that way.
An apology should never be followed by but. We've talked about that before too.
Yeah. But what I was saying was fall on the sword.
Yeah.
And don't defend your position. And I promise, can't guarantee, but I promise you that type of communication style will begin to open up just a mammoth road of communication and relationship later.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
I'll take it.
You will.
I will take it. I'll take anything you got from me.
We better quit right here. Welch out.
Welch out.